Fledgling Spanish brand Cupra offers a surprisingly appealing compact family EV with sporting genes. This car, the Born. This is only the company's second standalone model, the first to be rear-driven and the first to be fully powered by electricity. It takes all the clever ingredients of other VW Group EVs, but blends them into a more engaging and characterful confection.
The Born springs away from rest, of course, as all EVs do, running out of puff just after the point where you realise that the torque rush has inadvertently pushed you over the speed limit. Everything so far is just as it would be in a Volkswagen ID3 this Born is almost entirely based on. But Cupra wants to convince you that this is a far sportier confection, and to that end has fitted shorter coil springs lowering the ride height, along with wider tyres, a more direct variable ratio steering setup and a retuned stability control system. To fit with all this, the electric power output of the kind of Born model most people will choose, 204 PS as here, is the kind of output only offered at the heady heights of the ID3 lineup, though the 58 kilowatt-hour battery it's linked to is the one that most versions of that VW use, here delivering a range of up to 265 miles. That figure falls fractionally to 262 miles if you add in the optional e-boost motor you can't have on an ID3, which adds an extra 26 PS of power for 30 seconds when you stamp on the throttle and ought to have been standardised on the Born to give it a more significant, unique selling point. The 230 PS e-boost motor comes as standard if you pay the extra for the larger 77 kilowatt-hour battery, which increases driving range to 343 miles. There are four main drive modes: comfort, performance, range and individual, with a further Cupra setting for the e-boost models. Optional DCC adaptive damping enhances the comfort setting, but you don't really need it because the standard passive setup is very good indeed. The Barcelona engineers must have worked really hard on that. A pity then that they weren't given leave by Wolfsburg to fiddle with the steering, which despite its quicker rack feels remote and very light on feedback. Even as it is though, this is, as intended, a far more engaging thing than its ID3 cousin, to the point where we'd find it hard to think of another similarly sized EV in this price bracket that we'd recommend over this one for a keen driver. As for charging, well, at a 100 kilowatt or 120 kilowatt hour public charging point, this 58 kilowatt hour model should take 35 minutes to replenish itself from 5 to 80%. You need 6 hours and 15 minutes to go from empty to full, hooked up to an 11 kilowatt garage wall box. Cupra says this Born was designed and developed in Barcelona, which is poppycock, of course. It's a restyled Volkswagen ID3 and rolls down the same German Zwickau production line as its sister car, unlike Cupra's other Iberian-built models. You can't deny, though, that it's got a bit more flair, attitude and presence than its Wolfsburg cousin. It's been described as the scary big sister to the ID3. Maybe so. It's certainly a little bigger, something you may pick up from a profile perspective, the Born measuring in 61mm longer, though that still leaves it some way short of the upper mid-sized EV hatches and crossovers Cupra also wants to target. Volkswagen's ID4, for instance, is 262mm lengthier. Copper highlights, as usual with Cupra, are an overriding theme, especially here at the aggressively angled nose, where they adorn the badgework and the frame that draws your attention to the prominent lower intake, designed to channel air towards the radiator for better battery thermal management. Just as different from anything with a Volkswagen badge, but perhaps a touch less successful, is the rear treatment. Cupra's usual coast-to-coast style tail lamps stretch across the tailgate, capped by an upper spoiler that connects seamlessly to the C-pillar. Lower down, body-coloured integrated diffuser supplies the required sporty vibe. But just how Cupra has the Volkswagen Group conglomerate allowed this Spanish brand to be inside? Well, it's actually quite a different ambience from the other compact VW Group EVs available at this price point, and quite an agreeable one. What is familiar is the futuristic feel. As with an ID3 or a Skoda Enyaq, there's no need for a gear lever, an ignition slot or a handbrake. And as with those cars, there's a 12-inch centre monitor and a 5.3-inch digital cockpit instrument screen, attached to which is a gear selector, the whole binnacle moving up and down as you adjust the wheel. Otherwise, this Born sets itself apart with a darker vibe, a strange indented passenger side dash finish, sustainably sourced soft touch surfaces and the usual Cupra brand copper coloured highlights, which here appear on the steering wheel, the vents, the seat stitching and frame the open part of the lower centre console. Time to take a look in the back seat. It's a wider cabin than that of a Golf or, say, a Nissan Leaf. And with no central transmission tunnel to obstruct things, 3 adults could fit more easily into the back of this car than just about any compact hatch we can think of, other than an ID3. So yes, the Born's a full 5-seater, provided the adults in question don't have particularly long legs. There's not a lot of knee room going spare. We'll finish with a look at the boot, which lifts with a push on this central Cupra badge. The trunk is 385 litres, the same size as an ID3, and about the same size as a Golf too, despite the presence of an electric motor down under the floor here. When you push everything forward, there's a reasonably flat cargo area, which frees up 1,267 litres of capacity. The decision to replace Seat badges with Cupra ones on this Born EV was interesting and says much about the VW Group's commitment to its sporting brand. Plus, it also fits with this design's mildly dynamic vibe. Yes, in some ways, it's a Volkswagen ID3 in a tracksuit, but at the same time, it also offers something just a little different and arguably more appealing. It's not as different from an ID3 as Cupra thinks it is. The Born's cause would have been helped in this regard if the brand had standardised the faster e-boost motor and made that a unique selling point. But this car is more engaging to drive and, to our eyes, more engaging to look at too. Do you really want to pay considerably more in this segment to get only slightly more space and fractionally more driving range from an EV that almost certainly won't be as interesting at the wheel or look as good on your driveway? Such is the Born ultimatum, and we can understand if you found yourself tempted by it.